Welcome to another at-home yoga practice brought to you by the Alaska Rock Gym. My name is Kim Greeff, and today I'm bringing you an Awaken class, a grounding and resourceful class, hoping that you'll wake up from the bottom up to the top. If you have at home 2 blocks and a dowel, the dowel you can grab from a closet. I actually robbed this from one of my closets at home. You could also use a broomstick or any other kind of piece that is similar to the wooden dowel. Come up to standing and align your feet right underneath your frontal hip points. We call this Tadasana, and for some of you, you might find that you line your feet up to the outer edges of your hips. I like to imagine that I had a little plumb line going from my frontal hip points down to the center of my foot. That's where you'll align your feet. You can keep your eyes open or close your eyes down, but take a moment and notice the bottoms of your feet. The way that your feet are interacting with the surface underneath you. In my case, I feel the yoga mat underneath my feet. You can sense the places where your pressure is light or where it's a little bit heavier. And our work here is to begin sensing. Zooplankton are these amazing plankton that make their way from the bottom of the ocean up to the surface in a daily migration, and then they make their way back down. Today's practice is very much about rising to the surface of things and then allowing ourselves to kind of sink back down into the depths. And we'll do that by using the dowel. So go ahead and take your dowel across the front of your mat. Bring one foot onto the dowel and begin rolling the dowel back and forth. Rolling from your toes towards your heel and back again. You get to determine how much pressure you use here. You can go a little harder, you can go a little softer. And our work is not to excavate decades of tension and or stress from the bottom of your foot with this hard dowel, but really to become sensitive to the sensations underfoot. And as you roll back and forth, you're rolling towards the heel, towards the toes. And just spend a little bit of time now kneading the dowel. So instead of rolling, you're placing pressure and then easing up. And again, you get to determine how much or how little weight you put into this. Go ahead and switch feet. Once again, we begin with the rolling back and forth. Paying attention to the sensations underneath your foot. And sensations are different than feelings. So sometimes when we get into this kind of work, we'll be like, oh, this feels really good. Well, what does good feel like? Does it feel like it releases? You sense the pressure now moving into the kneading of my foot on the dowel. And the sensation has a way of helping us to land in the present moment so that we can sense and feel in the moment that we're in versus our mind taking us to someplace else. I like to think of the zooplankton as they rise to the surface, filtering through the water, and then they trickle back down to the depths of the ocean in their daily migration from the depth to the surface of things. Now you'll take take your dowel and begin to walk both feet over it. And right now I'm kneading my way across the dowel, being careful not to pitch the dowel out from underneath me. Letting my feet acclimate to what it's like to put a little bit more pressure into the dowel. And now taking both of my heels down on the ground, spreading out through the toes, I begin to walk forward enough so that my heels rise and my toes come down. So I'm pivoting over the dowel, heels down, and then rising up so that my toes come down. If that gets a little bit challenging for you, you could do one leg at a time, or put your hand on the wall for a little extra balance. Last little piece here with the dowel. Go ahead and slide your toe over to the side of your dowel so you have one big toe moving up the dowel. From here, your other 4 toes are off the edge of the dowel. I'll have you step your other foot forward and lift your heel towards the sky, keeping the ball of your foot firmly grounded on the mat. You might feel a stretching sensation underneath the bottom of your foot, from the big toe, maybe through the center of your foot, all the way towards the heel. And we'll ease off on that and switch sides. Walking to the other side of the dowel, your big toe goes straight up. If it's starting to veer over, reach down and push your big toe towards the center line. Your other 4 toes go down on the ground. Step your foot over the dowel. Lift your heel up. And here, as you do this, you might sense that the stretch is a little different on this side than it was on the first side. Noticing the difference between your sides is great information. Don't have to go into meeting making about it just yet. Good. Set your dowel aside and have a seat on your mat. You can tuck one foot underneath you, bringing the other foot in front. We use our hands to help mobilize our toes and our feet a little bit more. We'll need this warm-up for where we're going a little later in the practice. So take a hold of your big toe and your 4 toes and begin to split them back and forth. I like to think of this like toe splits. Then move to the next toe over and do your toe splits between the second and the third toe. Over to the third toe and the 4th toe. And from the 4th toe over to the 5th toe. And grab a hold of your 4 toes and your big toe and begin to mobilize them back and forth. Now we'll take our big toe and our second toe and do the splits laterally. And as I pull my big toe and my second toe apart, I am not looking for the biggest sensation possible here, just enough that I feel some space between those 2 toes. Then I move to the second and the third toe over, and again, that lateral split. The third toe and the 4th toe, and the 4th toe and the 5th toe. Here comes my favorite part. Take your ankle over your thigh and interdigitize, interlacing your fingers with your toes. If this is challenging for you, you could use just the tips of your fingers between your toes, but if you're a seasoned toe spreader, try to bring the knuckles of your fingers up through into the knuckles of your toes. I've got a little practice with this. Consider myself a seasoned toe spreader. Then begin to turn your ankle in a circle, while squeezing your fingers into your toes and your toes into your fingers. Reverse the direction of your circles. Next, spiral your footbed towards the ceiling. So my ankle's not doing a lot of movement here. It's the bottom of my foot pad that's rolling towards the sky. And I use the finger grip between the toes to roll the pad of my foot down towards the floor. We'll toggle back and forth through that a few times. Release your fingers from your toes. We'll interlace the other side here in a moment. But for now, bring your feet out in front of you and notice the difference between the two sides. You might notice some color distortion on the one side that you just worked. Perhaps you feel a little bit more aliveness in the foot that we just worked. We'll switch sides, starting with our toe mobilization, using our hands. So again, first we do this little vertical split from the big toe to the second toe. From the second toe over to the third toe. From the third toe over to the fourth toe. And the fourth toe over to the fifth toe. Using your hands to cup your foretoe, your hand, and your big toe is mobilized with the other hand. Begin to toggle back and forth so your four toes are moving separate or in opposition of your big toe. Let's go for the lateral splits. So you're taking your two hands and pulling your big and second toe apart. Don't get too crazy with this. You're not looking for a huge, massive stretch. And even though we're calling this lateral splits, your toes will never go into a full lateral split, I hope. Second and third toe over. Third and fourth toe. Fourth and fifth toe. Bring your ankle over your thigh in whatever way is comfortable for you. Interlace your fingers with your toes. Again, you can use just the tips of your fingers between your toes, or if you're a little bit more seasoned at this, bringing the knuckles in a little closer to the knuckles. Holding your ankle, squeezing your toes, and begin to roll your ankle in a circle. And reverse. Becomes too much of a sensation on the supporting leg, you could bring that out straight, and you could even put your hand underneath your ankle so you get a little buffer between your ankle and your quadriceps of the supporting leg. Stabilize your ankle now so you can spiral your footbed towards the sky and then towards the floor. Towards the sky and then towards the floor. Release your fingers from your toes. Notice your feet out in front of you. And then interlace your toes with your toes. So you start from the pinky side, then the second toes, then the third toes, the fourth toes, and finally the big toes. Squeeze your toes into your toes. The sensation of this might be a lot. So can you stay with the intensity of it while noticing your breath? Notice I didn't cue you to breathe deeply with that, but just to notice your breath and breathe slowly through your nose. Look down at your toes and unravel them one at a time. You might notice that they just blow open like a zipper that's been busted, but you're trying to connect your brain to your toes to start to get some of that independent movement back. Reweave your toes in the other non-dominant toe weave so that the opposite big toe is on top. And again, the invitation is to squeeze your toes into your toes and track your breath. Your feet are the foundation of everything that comes up above it, from your ankles to your knees to your hips. So we can look at ankle mobilization as being rising from the depths on up, and then our attention moving back down. Go ahead and move your toes off of each other, one at a time, doing your best to do that. Closing your legs and transferring onto your knees. I'll use my blocks for a little bit of help here. Start in Virasana with toe stands. And in Virasana, make sure that your pinky toe isn't getting kind of caught underneath that. And for most of us, we'll use this as a passive stretch, right? The weight of our hips pouring into our feet and our feet into the mat. But I'm going to ask you to try to scoop your toes towards your shin, making this really active and a whole lot more work in the front of your shins. Sitting up tall, again, noticing your breath without having to alter it, without holding it. Now I want you to imagine you could smear your toes towards the back of the room. Like you could somehow press your toes towards the back of your mat. And notice how the arch of your foot begins to light up significantly. Next, we'll go into Virasana with the blocks. So you'll lean forward into your blocks and then lift your knees up off the mat. You might find that your heels come down easily and you can kind of rise up. Then you sink back down, lift your heels, and dock your knees back down onto the ground, pointing your toes towards the wall behind you and resting your weight into your heels. Rinse and repeat after that. Hands to blocks, toes curl under, lifting your knees, rocking your heels back, rising up into a little bit of a hip hinge, sinking back down, lifting the heels, and then docking your knees back down on the ground, lifting and pointing your toes towards the wall behind you. We'll do that a few more times. Hands to blocks, toes curl under, rocking your weight back to your heels, heels down, hips lift, hips down, heels up, knees down, toes point, hips down. Notice I didn't use my blocks for that last one. You too can see if foregoing your blocks is the next stage for you. If not, keep your hands on your blocks. You might be noticing a lot of work in the front of your ankles. This kind of active dorsiflexion in our range of motion can be a lot of work, and it's almost like sneaky strength kind of work. So we'll give your ankles a little bit of a break here. Come onto your hands and knees and straighten your left leg towards the wall behind you and begin to make large circles with your ankle. And then reverse the direction. Switching sides, taking your right leg back, making large circles with your ankle. Trying to smear and touch as much of your foot onto the mat as you can. Reversing. Now we go back into our toe squats. So you'll take your two blocks, place them in front of you, rock back into this position. And I'm going to show this from the side. I think it'll be the best way for you to see me. And keep my blocks out a little bit so you can see my ankles. However, if you need more stability in close to you, you are welcome to move your blocks in closer to your body. Okay, here comes the work. You're going to rise up onto the balls of your feet, and then sink your heels back down towards the floor, trying to pull your toes up towards your shin as your heels go down. Rising up onto the toes, heels moving down towards the floor. So we're rocking up into these toe rocking within our squat. And next, as I do this next move, I'm going to move the blocks behind me and try to dock my knees slowly down on the floor. Blocks come in front. I lift my knees up, rise up onto my toes, and then I'm going to see, as if I was in an elevator, as if I could slowly rise up to a standing position, rising onto the balls of your feet. And then it's like your torso is going down an elevator shaft as your knees come forward and you slowly come back down. Slow and controlled is the name of the game here. It's a lot of work in your ankles, in your feet. Once again, notice your breath. You're not holding it, but attempting to breathe in and out through your nose. And set your knees down. We'll go into the next piece in which you'll need a block in front of you. So take your block and step one foot onto it. Your other leg can be more in a monk lunge position underneath your hip, or you can kind of take a combat squat with your toes curled under in more of a virasana. What you want to make sure is that your knee isn't winging out to the side as you do this, but we're looking to bring the knee straight over the toes. My heel is going to try to stay down on the block. So as I lunge forward, my heel is down, and you could do this with a block not underneath you if you needed to. Taking your foot to the floor, seeing if that works better for you. Play around with a block or no block. So as I lunge my knees over my toes, I'm attempting to press my entire foot down into the block, strongly. I'm using quite a bit of pressure here to press down. Now I'll counter that by attempting to bring my toes up towards my shin. It's quite a bit of work, but here we're playing with active range of motion within the depth of our dorsiflexion. And this is essentially like a one-legged squat. And let that go and switch sides. Again, you could start more of a monk lunge with your knee coming forward, heel stays down on the block, or you can take a little bit more of that combat position, putting your weight down into the back heel. Leaning forward, your knee may come over your toes, your heel is staying down. Dorsiflexion in our ankle is designed to happen at a depth in which our knee will come over our toes. So when we walk up mountains, when we come downstairs, when we squat deeply, our knee will come over our toes. If this is new work for you, there's lots of information out there on training your knees over toes because it's a natural occurrence. If you look at any little kid squatting, any little kid playing, you'll see their knees come over their toes all the time. Remember, in this position, we're pressing down strongly through the foot into the block. And then attempting to lift your toes up towards your shin. The arch of my foot is cramping quite a bit here. My face might not show it, but my arch of my foot is the mayor of cramp town right now. There is a lot of cramping happening here. It's not that I'm trying to be overwhelmed by it or change it. It dissipates usually after a few moments. up on that. Come on up to standing, and let's go through some rhythmic movement. Before we go, you'll take your right foot to the floor and just begin to flick your toes back and forth. Just giving your toes, your ankles, your feet just a little bit of wake up after all that really strong work. And then switching sides. Flicking your toes back and forth. Next, find your Tadasana with your feet underneath your frontal hip points. Take a moment to either close your eyes or keep your eyes open. Sense your feet right now. Do they feel more warm? Do they feel heavier? Do they feel tingling? Do you notice more proprioception, the felt sense of where your body is in space? Or perhaps more interoception, the felt sense within your own tissues? We take all of this really good ankle mobilization, footwork, and we take it into a split squat. In a split squat, you'll need a block positioned for one foot to be underneath or on top of it. If you have a larger foot, taking two blocks and putting them together is good. If you had a small table at home or a stack of blocks, might get a little precarious. I wouldn't recommend doing this on a slippery surface. You need something solid that you can really mobilize with. My feet aren't big enough for two blocks, so I'm going for the one block split squat. In this position, I lift up through the back toes so that my heel is lifting rather and my toes are pressing down. I'm coming upright and I'll take my hands to my hips to stay kind of out of the way of me leaning forward. Then I dive down slow and controlled. My knee comes down towards the floor, and at the bottom of this, I'm trying to pull the block back, my foot back towards me, as I rise back up from the split squat. Both legs straighten, and that's one. Let's do 4 more. Taking your knee down towards the floor, slowly coming into your split squat, pausing at the bottom of this, engaging your hamstrings by pulling your heel back, and then floating your way up from this position. At the very top of this, straightening both legs. 3 more. Last 2. It's a lot of work. We've got 1 more. My back foot, the arch of my back foot, is on fire with the amount of work that's happening there. Switching sides. I'm actually going to switch directions. Taking my other foot to the block. Back toes curl under. And notice my legs aren't really far apart. So if I did a big split squat, where my stance was really large, that would be a completely different kind of vector within my tissue. So I'm going a little bit closer in this split squat. Of course, if you're taller, you may need more space between your legs. You'll just have to feel what works best for you. Okay, we have 5 split squats on the second side. Lifting up through your back heel, tall through your spine, slow and controlled, coming down towards the floor, pausing, pulling your heel back towards your hamstring, floating your way back up. This is where I like to think of the daily migration of the zooplankton as they go from the depths of the ocean down, and that daily migration coming back up. One more. We got this, right? You could always have your hands on two dowels in front of you, a wall on one side, something to steady yourself here. Both legs straighten. Good work. Surprisingly, a lot of work in the back foot. Some of you might be feeling a majority of the work in the front leg. I'm going to keep this block here to show you for the next setup. So we have the block underneath the front foot on the first variation of split squat. We move it to the back so that we change the angle of the work and change the muscle group that we're aiming for. Notice if you can feel the difference between the split squat with the block underneath the front foot and the split squat with the block underneath the back foot. Again, it's a little precarious stepping up onto something and then coming forward. So you could always go put your hand against the wall if you needed to, or practice with a dowel or two dowels plugged into the floor. So here I step forward, back heel lifts up, hands on my hips, and I'm slowly going down towards the floor, pulling my heel towards my seat, and floating back up, straightening both legs at the top of that. 4 more. Last one. So much work. I'm going to move the block to the other side. Stepping my foot up onto the brick. My other foot coming forward. Mentally preparing myself for the second side. Breathing through my nose, attempting not to breathe through my mouth. And just using enough of the breath that I'm not holding it, but I'm also not trying to flood it in and out. Okay, 5 on this side. Come a little further forward here. I think that was 5. I honestly lost count. I'm not great at counting my own reps. Sometimes I get so lost in the feeling of it and the work of it that I lose track of the count. I trust you'll get the count right at home. So a lot of work in your legs. Go ahead and stand in your Tadasana once again. Feet underneath your frontal hip points. Rotate your palms out to the sides. Put your head right on top of your shoulders. Tadasana, mountain pose. You can close your eyes or keep your eyes open. Connect to the sensations of your feet, your lower legs, maybe now into your legs, to your hips. taking a bottom-up approach to today's practice, helping to use the sensations as a resource for grounding, staying connected in that daily migration from the depths to the surface of things. Let's begin to unwind. Psoas swings are a way of letting your psoas, which is a hip flexor, attaches from the inside of your thigh to along your spinal column on the side there. You can use 1 block or 2 blocks for your psoas swing. A step in your house, holding onto the banister, would also work really well here. If your balance feels off, you could always go to the wall, put your hand against the wall. But you'll step up onto your bricks. Just begin to swing your leg back and forth. What I like about the psoas swing, if you're not holding onto a wall, is that your arms start to do this little contralateral movement, as if you were walking. As you're swinging your leg back and forth, it's not a lot of movement in the ribs and the low back. That's all staying quite relatively still. But your leg, you imagine, or I like to imagine, is getting heavier towards the floor, as if the weight of your legs swinging back and forth is letting all of the muscles that attach along the upper portion just kind of soften. It's also a lot of work in the standing legs arch. So again, for my flat-footed friends, for those of you who have instability in your ankles, or you find that your feet in general are weak from being in footwear that's too tight or restrictive, all of this can be fantastic strengthening for your feet. Then step off of your blocks. Notice the difference once again between your two sides. And then switch. If I'm on 1 block, I tend to drag my toes on the floor. My leg lets go quite quickly with the psoas swing. So 2 blocks give me a little bit more space from the floor. I love the arm swing in this. You might notice the difference between the 2 sides, from the right to the left. I notice on this side that the arch of my foot on the block is not working near as hard as the other side did. I say that a little too soon because now it is. Good. Step off of your bricks, move your blocks aside, and stand for a moment in Tadasana. Rotate your arms, spiraling them into external rotation, sensing the broadness across your collarbones. Let's add in a little bit of grounding for the upper body, because if your legs and feet feel anything like mine, there's a real solid connection to the earth beneath. So if you bring your 2 palms together and press your palms into your palms, your elbows rise up about the same height as your wrists and shoulders. And as you match the pressure of your hands into your hands, let your head kind of float back onto your shoulders. From here, feel the circumference of your ribs on your inhale. That gentle kind of stretching from the front side to the back side to the sides of your ribs. And then let all of that go. We'll start to unwind now, or continue to unwind with Viparita Karne, or legs up. So your block will come in handy for this next one. We'll take all of that really good energy from the feet through the legs towards the hips. When you lay down on your back and place a block underneath your hips, you can bring one leg up towards the sky and then the other. In this position, you might find you need to go to a wall and put your heels against the wall in order to find comfort here, especially if you don't have the length in your hamstrings to bring your legs straight up and down like this. Some of you might also find that a yoga block is too high for your hips to be in. And if you feel any kind of anxiousness or anxiety here in your chest and or throat, come off of the block and use like a rolled up towel or maybe a blanket instead. Take the height down a few notches. In this position, you have a fantastic view of your feet. Take a moment and notice your feet. You might sense the trickling sensation of your circulation as it cascades down from your feet, down your legs, your thighs, your hips. And taking one foot down to the mat, then the other. Lift your hips off of your brick, slide your block aside. Straighten one leg and then the other. Rolling your arms to a palm face position, allowing your legs to roll open. Final Shavasana. You are welcome to rest here for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you for joining me in practice. Bring your hands to your heart in Anjali Mudra. Allow your thumbs to rest against your sternum, your fingers to fan away from that space. The light within me bows to the light within you, and in the light of yoga, may we all shine on. Namaste.